Well, I am excited. It's Ginny Field here to introduce to you again my dear friend, someone I truly love out of the Chicagoland area, Lynn Madison. She's remarkable, an incredible instructor, an incredible human being, and even if we don't always agree on who should win in football, we still like each other. And we have a big topic to talk about today, don't we, Lynn?
We do. We do.
Well,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing and you're hearing, and we're traveling all over the country, is that there are agents out there in the world, wherever part of the United States of America they are, who really do believe that with everything happening, that buyers are going to go directly to listing agents and think that's going to be okay. Because for two things. Thing one is they don't understand, but thing two is they really believe that they're going to be able to save money. And I think I shared with you already earlier when we were chatting before we got together, I have profound problems with the simple fact that they don't understand the issue of representation at some level. And I'm not going to say anything about the dual agency issue as a whole, but what I do know is that there are often relationships between listing agents and sellers that outlives, if you will, a representation thing with a buyer. So we have a lot to talk about, Lynn, and I think what I'd like to do is kind of have your thoughts on buyers who really feel, and because we've seen this, buyers are saying buyer agency, buyer representation, working with buyers is going to go away anyway. So talk to me. What do you think?
Okay. I hear it. So let me, by way of introduction, just say
Yes.
for myself, I took the lead on the rewrite, update, whatever you want to call it, of the
And
ABR
it's well
program.
done, well done, well done, well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Because we had to refocus the ABR program to how to deliver your value proposition, how to get a buyer representation agreement signed, and what all of that entails. So the ABR program and the SRS program, the Seller Representative Specialist program, the same thing is happening on that side as well. Because you have to know how to have this conversation with your sellers. So there's so many, it's even hard to figure out where to start. So when I'm in class and somebody says, well, why? Well, I think the buyers are going to go directly to the listing agents. And I say to them, then why aren't they doing that now?
Yes.
That they could go directly to the listing agents. And we know that sometimes that happens, but vast amount of time, buyers are represented by they're represented by one brokerage company and the seller's represented by another. So the buyers aren't doing it now. I'm not real sure why everybody thinks they're going to when all of these lawsuits in the DOJ and everything settles down. And when I say settle down, I don't necessarily mean go away. I mean, when they're done changing our business.
They're going to change it. It's going to be a fundamental change.
Yeah, there is. So I want to start with the representation issue. And Jenny, you and I both have talked about this before. In some states, and maybe that's even a better place to start.
Yes, I agree.
Whatever you read, whatever you hear from someone in another state, you have to take it with a grain of salt if you take it even with that much.
Maybe two grains. Two grains of salt, and that's max.
Absolutely. We read on Facebook, on emails, from people who are supposed to know what they're talking about. Maybe they do, about how real estate is done in their state, but there just was an article that was written. We don't need to get into where and who wrote it or anything like that. It is so wrong for, I'm going to say, 40 plus states.
No question.
And people are reading it and they're panicking.
Yes.
Because they don't understand it.
Well,
go ahead.
I want to just jump in there, because when I read that, I had that moment and okay, none of this applies in California. I live in California. And in California, you are presumed to be a fiduciary to the buyer with or without a contract, but that's not even the issue. Some of the things that came up in the article that you're mentioning that we're not mentioning does not apply across the United States of America.
Does not.
In fact, 2/3, if not more of it, just is very specific to the state that the agent is from who wrote the article. Do you agree?
That's right. I agree. And that is becoming dangerous.
Yeah, very dangerous.
Because it's happening on Facebook groups.
Yeah.
It's happening everywhere,
Yeah.
that everybody thinks they're an expert on what's going on here. And they may be in their state, but we have to, I'm serious, we've got to stop listening to what other people are saying about how they do it in their state. For example, even dual agency is different in every state.
Without
in
question.
Illinois, the only time we are dual agents is in a same agent transaction.
So same brokerage, dual agency, single agents, dual agency is what you're saying?
Single agent, dual agency. I have the listing, I have the buyer, I'm a dual agent. But if Ginny and I worked in the same office, she could have the buyer, I could have the seller, and we are not dual agents in Illinois.
And let's take it to California.
In California,
we operate under a broker, an umbrella of the brokerage, which means you can be. I worked in North San Diego County, and in my office I could have a listing, but the agent who could bring the buyer could be in South San Diego County in the city of San Diego. But because we operate under the brokerage umbrella, we're in dual license, dual agency. That's right. And so that means the buyer agent for the buyer still effectively under that umbrella works also, or has responsibilities to the seller, even though they never met the seller, which sounds a little bit like what we used to do back in the day. Yes.
And the only reason we're bringing this up is to give you a very simple example of why we've all got to stop hanging on every word that comes out of states that don't do agency the same way we do. Correct. So with that being said, and kind of setting the table with that, the idea that a buyer is going to forego representation on the largest single investment that they make in their lives, that not only monetarily largest investment, but forms their family life as long as they live there. I mean, this is what we do is so important to the clients. And to think that they're going to go directly to try to save money that they're not going to save. So they're going to, and I'll get to the money part in a second, but the representation alone, because that listing agent, I have always said that I believe that dual agency, listing agents selling their own listings, I don't care what you end up being, but your relationship with the parties is changed slightly in every state if you're selling your own listing. Yes. I think that's a pretty safe statement to make. No question. Typically, you've had the listing longer than you've had the buyer. Correct. That seller has gotten all of my advice and counsel for 30 days or more, or I don't care if it's only 3 days. Right. And now all of a sudden the buyer comes along, I'm a dual agent, and I can't help the buyer at all. And I met the buyer an hour and a half ago at an open house, or somebody referred them. We have no relationship with the buyer, but we have a relationship with the seller. How can you truly be in an equal representation environment in dual agent, single license, dual agency in that description? I don't know how you can. And even if you can, the optics of it are bad. Yeah. Even if you can. So the buyers once, and part of the problem, and there's no way that you can do this conversation in a linear way. We have to take all these little shortcuts, I think. But part of the problem that a lot of us are dealing with, a lot of our realtors are dealing with, is that they have, for the most part, many of them never sat down with a buyer and given the buyer their value proposition. Oh, just preach it, baby. That's my thing is I agree. We have really not done I'm not even going to say a good job. We've not done a job of explaining to the buyer who we are as representing them in a buyer relationship, and what we do for them, and why. I mean, and why.
And you and we've taught classes recently, and when you look at the room and you're talking about a buyer counseling session, and they look at you like you've just grown 7 heads on your neck.
That's right.
Then
That's right.
like, how do you overcome that? Because it's never been done. Well, yeah.
And I say to everybody, when you sit down with a seller, you spend an hour to an hour and a half with that seller, telling them about what you do, how you do it, and why that benefits the seller. And then we get the listing agreement signed. But here we are faced with the very real probability that we're all going to need buyer representation agreements signed.
Yep.
And we've got agents who are still saying, and that buyer representation agreement will have compensation in it.
Yes.
And I think the minute we say that, everybody, well, first of all, everybody jumps to the conclusion that we're saying exclusive buyer representation, and we're not.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a non-exclusive buyer representation agreement. Although I tell everyone that's like putting training wheels on your bicycle.
Well, it's also like,
get on the bike.
Do you want to have a non-exclusive listing representation agreement?
Right. But the possibility is there. Nobody is forcing the buyers to sign on to you for in perpetuity.
I agree.
But there will be an agreement signed. And everybody's jumping to the conclusion that the minute we start talking to the buyers about compensation, then they're going to go directly to the listing agent. So I want to go there for a moment. Mm-hmm. What makes the buyer think they're going to save money buying the house through the listing agent? That buyer has less control over what I make when he is my customer rather than when he is my client.
Exactly.
And he's coming to me saying, I don't want representation. This is what the agents are saying. By the way, can I say, I don't hear the buyers saying this. I hear our agents saying this because with all due respect, and I love you all, because you don't know how to give your value proposition to the buyers. So you're assuming that the buyers are now going to not want to work with you, but that's because they don't know what your value is. So that's a separate issue. That's where the ABR comes in. That's where we teach you how to do your value proposition. And we do. But I've got a listing agreement signed with my seller. My seller has agreed to pay the listing brokerage X and to pay the brokerage that brings in the buyer Y. Mm-hmm. One or the other. I mean, and maybe the seller has said, no, I don't want to pay the buyer brokerage anything. Well, either way, the buyer's been paying the compensation all along.
Anyway, all along. And, that's one of the other battles. Isn't that my favorite thing?
That's right.
Well, one of my favorite things to do when I teach. Well, who really pays the commission anyway? The seller. No. Where does the seller get the money?
That's right. The seller didn't have any money till my buyer showed up at the closing.
Correct.
With buckets full of cash.
Correct.
For a 30-year mortgage.
Correct.
So we just have to explain this differently. Yeah. I seriously do not believe, because even years and years ago, when many of us started in the business, we never represented the buyers. Mm-hmm. Never, ever, ever.
Sub-agency.
We were sub-agents of the sellers, and the buyers still didn't go directly to the listing agents to buy the houses. Mm-hmm. So this is something I think that we as agents are manifesting in our heads.
Yes.
Because I don't see it at all being done by the buyers.
Well,
I also
go ahead. No.
I also just wanted to say, the other thing that I see as I teach this all over the country is that agents are missing a big piece of this. Mm-hmm. The buyer always has the ability to use the purchase agreement, the sales contract, whatever you call it in your state. The buyer can ask the seller to pay the compensation.
Well, what you're saying there, and that's so paramountly important, is the buyer, who is the principal, has the ability to ask the seller, who is the principal, about that compensation. It is not agent to agent. And you and I both know, and we probably have gotten some gray hairs for it, where the agent has all of a sudden decided that they are the principal and are making decisions on the client's behalf. The principal to principal can have that conversation. Now, one thing that you put in the new ABR, updated ABR, is that if the buyer is asking It can't be directly to the seller, correct? And the listing agent, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have no problem with this, but the listing agent cannot refuse to take the request to the
Correct.
seller.
That is true.
So share,
So,
please.
so if my buyer, so if what's being offered in the MLS is 4 cents in a chicken, all right, or whatever the offer of compensation is, and what I have in my buyer rep agreement is more than that. My buyer has basically 3 options. I have an obligation. Every buyer representation agreement I've ever seen has a statement in there that says, if the compensation being offered by the seller or the listing brokerage does not match what is in this buyer representation agreement, I will tell my buyer that before I show them the property.
Absolutely.
So the buyer can now make their decision. First decision is they could choose not to look at the property. And for those people listening to this who have only sold houses in the post-COVID years, you are all sitting there going, yeah, but the buyers are never going to say that. Yeah, they do, because this is not a normal market.
No question.
When there is more inventory, and that will happen, then, and there's 5 or 6 houses for sale in that subdivision, or 5 or 6 units for sale in that building, the buyers will say, because I've been using buyer rep agreements for many years, the buyers do say, show me the ones where I don't have to negotiate compensation with the seller at the same time we're negotiating price and terms. So the first option is they don't look at the property. Second option is the buyers can pay us at the closing. That is not the option they choose.
Right.
The third option is they can ask the seller to pay it. Now, many states and some associations, so you're looking at, I know California's already got it, the something that goes on the or it's in the, did they rewrite the contract to put it in there, or is it okay?
There's an additional clause, and if you have Washington State or the Northwest MLS area, you have multiple states that have changed their agreements.
Change their agreements. And we didn't change our agreement in Northern Illinois, but we did create an addendum so that the buyer can ask the seller to, we're in the process of changing our agreement, but it took us 14 months to change it last time. We don't have enough. We don't have 14 months to get this going. So the buyer can ask the seller to pay the compensation. One of the things we did in ABR is we kind of beefed up a little bit the discussion of the 4 contracts in the real estate business. To Ginny's point, I, as a buyer agent, cannot use that contract to ask the listing agent to pay me more of their commission.
No.
That's what's a violation. And really, if you think about it, even if I wrote in there that I wanted you to pay me 42%, you still only owe me whatever was either in the MLS or whatever was in our written agreement that you were.
Correct.
So it's got to be between the buyer and the seller. But the buyer in most states, you notice I said in most states, you can, not all, I'll never say all. You cannot do that without a buyer representation agreement.
Correct.
Because the buyer's the one that's got to write it in there. And let's face it, why would the buyer write it in there if he didn't owe you that money?
Correct.
This is all about the conversation. Everything. We have to change our conversation with the seller. We have to change our conversation with the buyers, because with all due respect to the 1 point whatever million of us there are, we've been saying it the wrong way for a long time.
Completely. And but what you're saying is what I've been saying as well. This is and we talked about this already. We said it. This is no longer a situation where you choose 7 houses or whatever number of houses to show a buyer and meet me at my office and we'll follow each other, or meet me at that first house and we'll follow each other. No, this is an appointment where you sit down with the buyer, you get to confirm their wants and needs, you walk through your value, you have them understand the whys behind, because we all understand that we have not done as an industry a great job of explaining what we actually do. We're not great at explaining our value, which has been one of those kind of things that poke me all the time. It's like, come on, people. We don't let anybody know, I'm taking a 35,000 foot view here, what we actually do to help facilitate the closing of a transaction between that buyer and that seller. And we're just not good at it. And we should be. We have no choice.
And that's evidenced by what's in some of those lawsuits.
No question about it. When
The
you saw,
lawsuits.
did you have a cow like I had a cow where it said, well, buyer's agents don't really do anything anyway?
Don't do anything. Correct. We don't do anything. That's what it says in that lawsuit, in the two big ones, is
Right.
that the only reason we're forcing sellers to pay buyer brokerage compensation is to pad the pockets of fellow realtors, because buyer agents really don't do anything. They have no idea what we do. And part of that's our fault. That's what Ginny and I are saying.
Yes,
Because
correct.
we haven't taken the time to
Correct.
explain to people what it is that we do.
And-
And we have to. And I'm going to throw something else in there. The Department of Justice gave us a settlement back in 2020.
Mhm.
Let's not even dig into the fact that that's still in the courts and all the rest of it, and it is as of this moment. But the bottom line is the DOJ said we had to stop saying to buyers that our services to them are
Are
free.
free.
And we changed the Code of Ethics. Standard of Practice 12-1 now says we cannot tell them that it is free unless we are actually not making any money. And now I'm going to tell you, we still have brokerages saying it. It's on their websites, it's on their TikTok reels, it's on their marketing materials where they're saying use a buyer agent because it doesn't cost you anything. So here we all are thinking, well, the buyers are going to go directly to the listing agent. At the same time, you've got people saying that the buyer, it doesn't cost the buyer anything to use a buyer agent. So I'm not real sure where everybody's coming up with the buyers are going to go directly to the listing agents. It just,
well, you know,
we could do it now. They could do it now, and they're not.
Right. And we both can have our internal positions. But one of the things that's really important to me, and I know it's important to you, we're both educators and we're both very passionate about helping the real estate community to be better at what they do.
Right.
And we saw recently, and I think I know what my reaction was, we saw recently an individual agent who had already received and had their accredited buyer representative designation. And they felt that they should not renew that designation because, well, everybody's going to go to listing agent. And I had a cow. I think this is more important today than it probably has ever been since sub-agency went away and agency law was created back decades ago.
Yes.
And it's, you know, I get upset when folks don't get educated before they make a bad decision. If you're going to make a bad decision, at least make a bad decision with education. And that's why one of the reasons we're doing this is because I truly believe that right now, more than ever before, since sub-agency was created, that the ABR designation and the SRS designation are the two most important designations any single agent could have. And then they say, well, I don't want to pay for it. Well, are you kidding me? You know, I was just in another part of the state of California, and an agent in the room said to me, I paid a whole lot more for my college degree than what this is costing for me to get this designation to be better at serving my consumers. And they don't understand the why behind it. And you have done an absolutely brilliant job of rewriting ABR to affect the changes necessary with what's going on in our world, in our real estate world right now, teaching that agent how to do a better job at the buyer counseling session and how to create a value proposition. So speak to that. I know you're as passionate as I am about it, so go ahead.
Yeah, and again, there was a time where we did meet the buyer at our office, at a coffee shop or whatever.
Remember those days?
Yeah, we did have a counseling session. And by the way, that was before COVID.
Yes.
And then when COVID hit, we couldn't do it in most states because nothing was open. Mm-hmm. So, but we never went back to doing it. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. And that may be why we've even got a bigger problem now than we ever had before, is that we're not taking the time to explain to the buyers what it is that we do for them. Mm-hmm. And what we do is immense. Mm-hmm. Everything we do for the buyers. But I also, there was an editorial written, and again, I'm not going to get into where and whatever, but this editorial, the statement that was made was, when all of this is done, and we will need buyer rep agreements, and we will have to give our value proposition. This person's opinion was that it will wash out of this business all of the entitled people who think all they have to do is show up, write a contract, and get paid all of that money. And I read it and I thought to myself, I wasn't going there, but you can't help but not think about that. Is that we've got tons of people in this business who don't care to educate themselves to be able to help their clients in the largest single purchase they make in their lives.
And that's one of the things that I say almost every single class I teach, that the people that should be in the room
are not
in the room. The people, whether it was during the short sale environment, the people that needed to be there weren't there. And having the assumption that it's easy, it is not easy. And a thought that occurred to me when you were speaking a moment ago, Lynn, is that I think those of us who are good at this do such an incredibly good job at making it look easy and seamless.
I agree.
That we have not yet, we don't do a good job of sharing the problems we solved, the band-aids we put on things, the wires we crossed and tied together and put a wire nut on. We don't do a good job of explaining that. We just solved the problem and here are your keys. And that is, I mean, when I try to think about, because I still do sell houses, I still represent buyers.
So do I.
And you do too. And so when you get to have, and I started thinking recently about some of the toughest transactions I've ever had, and the buyer never knew what I had to do to make sure that I handed them a key at the end of the transaction. They had no idea. They had no idea what I did.
If you read, because NAR does the profile of home buyers and sellers study every year. And that's one of the things that shows up in there and has done since day one, is in essence, the buyer saying, I don't know how I got from, we opened the door and I fell in love with the house. And now I'm sitting at the closing table with a 30-year mortgage for $400,000 and I don't know how I got here.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't even know how they got from A to Z.
And part of through the negotiation process, because I just had the joy of teaching RENE, real estate negotiation expert, 2 times in the last 2 weeks in 2 different locations. And we teach then the nuance of the process. Right. How do you solve the problem every single time? But one of my favorite things in the whole wide world when I'm handing a buyer a key is that, well, this kind of happened and it was a bit of a problem, but I was able to fix it for you. Welcome to your new home. Yeah. That's what we do beautifully. Yes. And it takes me right back to, it was hard for me to see that email where this person said, I don't see that I need to renew because everybody's going to go to the listing agent. And how much louder can we shout that I think ABR and SRS are the single 2 most negotiation. 3 of them are the 3 most important designations anyone can get right now in our industry.
I'm a little concerned about the people who believe that the buyers are going to go directly to the listing agents.
Please.
I'm concerned that that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
No question.
That if you keep saying that, and if you keep thinking that, you are never going to develop your value proposition. You're never going to practice how to deliver that to the buyers. And you're going to allow this to happen because you're not doing your job. And that's wrong. That's as wrong as what we've been doing all along, leading the buyers to believe that we did this for free.
And how do you, as an agent who, I mean, because I'm a coach as well. And so how do you get that agent to understand and believe in themselves enough, right, to be able to defend, if you will, what their value really is? They have to express it, they have to detail it, and then they have to believe it themselves. And that's, as a coach, one of the most difficult things I deal with is you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe you have value. You have to be able to articulate what you do, how you do it, what you say, how you say it, the places that you solved problems without, at some level, the buyer always knows at the end of the day, everything that we had to do to get the deal to be okay. But Sorry.
And we did
I'm
that
having a
in
moment. I'm having a moment. I apologize.
well, what we tried to do with ABR and what I would like to see all the managing brokers do with their agents is to walk them through what are, and I called them the big bucket items. That's the way we did it in SRS as well.
Yeah.
You know, we find property for our buyer, we show property, we analyze the market, because everything we do depends on whether it's a seller's market or it's a buyer's market.
Without question.
And
Which means
if
I may, which means the agent that's doing it has to know what the statistics say. They have researchers. This is not like back in the olden days.
No.
We had a book and you had no access to the internet. You have to know what's going on in your marketplace and express that information.
Because the buyers are hearing talking heads on television talking about what's happening nationwide. That doesn't mean that's what's happening in your marketplace.
No.
So if I hear one more time that the prices are coming down, I want to know where in the what that's happening, because that's not happening in my marketplace.
No,
our prices are still going up.
Right. But so, you can only have that conversation if you're paying attention. And I'm a believer, and I say this, you need to be looking at stats every single day, 5 days a week.
Absolutely right.
Business days only. You can take Saturday and Sunday off, but business days only, because if you can, if you don't know, one of the ways I try to correlate that is when I was in management, my largest office, as you know, is very large. And I worked in the corporate building. So that meant the corporate entities, all the big guys were upstairs 4 floors from me. And at any moment in time, they could walk in the door and ask me how my numbers were. If I didn't know my numbers, I was going to fail as their leader, as the managing broker. Well, if you're an agent today and you don't know your numbers, are you equipped? I don't think.
I think half our agents have no idea what those numbers are. Yeah. They don't even know necessarily how to determine whether it's a buyer's market or it's a seller's market. Right. Which they know instinctively maybe, but that doesn't help you be able to explain it to the buyers. No. When the buyers are still thinking they should be able to buy a house for 92% of its list price, and everything's selling. We've got some of our marketplaces that are selling the median sales price is over 100% of
correct. Still.
Still. And then the other thing that's so important, and Ginny mentioned it, is negotiating. Yes. When I teach negotiating, I start with a quote from Einstein.
Right.
And I'm a huge sports fan. But
understatement just spoken.
Yeah, just say it. But this is not a quote from any coach or manager. It's from Einstein. You need to know the rules of the game and play the game better than anybody else.
Correct. Right.
And
which is let me take you to what you just said, which is what ABR gives the agent working with buyers. That's why its value is enormous. If you want to still make, if this is your career path and you have a desire to be a successful real estate professional, today more than ever before, you must be educated. And the ABR is foundational with everything going on.
One of the things we also put in there was a beefed up section on how to make your buyer's offer better in a multiple offer situation, besides just throwing money at it.
Right.
Because we keep throwing money at it. So then we also beefed up, what do you do when it doesn't appraise section? Because that's exactly what was happening, is that the buyers were just going up and up and up in price, and it wasn't appraising. And now we've got another problem we have to deal with. So, and I don't know how that's all going to play out and how all of that's going to work if we have the buyers going directly to the listing agents to get all of this done. Because there's so much involved. And if you are a dual agent, you've got 2 choices for the most part in almost every state. If I'm the listing agent and a buyer comes directly to me, I'm either a dual agent, all 3 choices. I'm a dual agent, or I become an agent of no one in some states. Or I still represent the seller and the buyer has no representation at all.
Or you could choose a designated agency in some states.
But even as a designated agent, those are my options.
Correct.
And the buyers need to understand that here's how I tell the agents to disclose no agency to a buyer. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I don't work for you, I work for the seller. The seller has not given me permission to be a dual agent. I can refer you to someone else, but if you want to work with me, please remember, do not disclose anything to
Any
me that
confidentiality,
you
correct?
do not want
No.
me to disclose to the
Right,
seller, because
right,
everything you say can and will be used against you in the
right.
purchase of this property. And that is just the Miranda rights of real estate.
Yes,
That's
right.
all that is.
And that goes back to when agency law was created and sub-agency went away. That's how far
That's right.
back. And when, you know, one of my favorite things to do is teach that history when I teach.
I do too.
But I think we're both on the same page, Lynn, that anybody watching this, no matter where you are, is first and foremost understand your state law. Secondarily, don't read everything you see, investigate and ask better questions, because if something is on a national website or a national platform, it may not apply at all in your state.
Correct.
And thing three, more than ever before, I think the one foundational piece that has been clear to me and what I've been watching with the lawsuits is lack of education.
Yes.
Educating the agents, brokerages training their agents, agents educating their consumers. It comes down to the foundational piece that states, be the best you can be.
That's
You
right.
need to look at your business. Number one, we suck at also treating ourselves as professionals. You know, that's a whole separate
No,
video.
I was just going to say, we'll do another video on that.
That one might require a cocktail in the video, maybe.
I think.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
No,
But
I agree.
but we as an industry need to understand the complexities of what we do, and then we need to articulate that complexity. And that's why education is paramount. And ABR, more than ever before in my mind, since it was created after subagency went away, is the single most important piece that you can possibly have. Worth every dime to get the education, worth every dime to renew that education, renew that designation, and use the content that you get through that designation that you receive by being an ABR to help promote what you do. Why are you different, ABR agent? I'm different because I took the time to get educated. I took the time to be the very best I could possibly be. And that's why you, Mr. and Mrs. Consumer, whomever you are, Ms. and Ms. or Mr. and whatever thing you choose, that's why you hire me, because I have chosen independently, intentionally to be educated on how to best represent you and your interests. Don't you agree?
I agree. And I just want to say to anyone who may be listening to this who already has their ABR and took it a number of years ago, please talk to your association. We have the ability for you to sit in on the new class, and it's not going to cost you as much as somebody taking it for the very first time. So we want to make sure that everybody has the ability to do that as well. So
I think that we're both you and I and NAR, and actually any associations that are hiring us and other instructors, want to make sure we can make it as easy as we possibly can. So if it becomes Zoom, it's Zoom. If it's hybrid, it's hybrid. If it's in live, it's live. But I think for us as instructors and us as at NAR, we need to make sure that this content is available to every agent out there. But agents that are watching, please do not diminish your value, and please do not diminish the value of the education you must have in the environment we're currently in. You agree, Lynn?
Excellent point. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, you're the best.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I am grateful to call you my friend, and I love the fact that we are both just a little bit passionate about.
A little bit, yeah. I think that comes across usually when we talk, but we're here. So if you have any questions, you need anything, we're here. You can get a hold of us different ways, but
at the end of the video, I will be adding contact information for both of us, and we want to be, both of us want to be of service to any of you watching, and be able to answer those questions and be able to support you. And we both strongly encourage you to find an ABR opportunity somewhere near you to take the class and learn, because I truly believe those of us who are best educated are the ones that are going to make money no matter what the market does. And I talk about that in classes. I wrote an article recently for a magazine, and it was about, people bought houses when interest rates were 17%. People bought houses when we were in the midst of a short sale and foreclosure process. People bought houses no matter what. And I saw a stat recently, Lynn, that you'll appreciate. And it basically said that 85 to 90% of the humanity in the United States of America still want to be homeowners. And when they want to be homeowners, we need to be the agents educated enough to do a great job helping them. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And there was one other thing that I was going to mention before, and I do want to say this.
Please.
To the issue of renewing your ABR.
Yes.
I can tell you for a fact that if I have a friend, a relative, or know someone in another state who wants to buy a home, I will not refer them to anyone who does not have their ABR.
Absolutely.
I cannot rely on the fact that your managing broker taught you all of this, and I know you didn't learn it in pre-licensing class. So I will only refer, and I think that under the circumstances and what we're going through now, I think that's going to be even more important than it ever has been before. And those of us who have our ABR are going to refer to people with an ABR.
Totally agree. And I do the same exact thing. In fact, I do that with SRS. I do that. I even with family members in another state, even when it was a short sale and foreclosure SFR, if somebody had the SFR, and that's one of the other tremendous benefits we have as designees, is that we can find an ABR in another state somewhere in the country where we can have the conversation with that person and refer to someone who's taken the time to be educated. So very, very good point, Lynn, and I thank you.
Yes.
All right, my darling, I know it's a little late for you. You're the best. I appreciate you so much.
Pleasure.
And I know we'll see each other very soon. It's currently October 2023, and we're going to see each other in November 2023.
Yes, we are. I'm coming to you. You're coming to California.
You're coming to my little world, and I love it.
Yes, we are.
The best part about November in California, it's still probably going to be 74 and sunny.
Yeah, and it's 32 degrees here today, I think. So that's all. I had a jacket on when I went out earlier. So yeah, I'm in Chicago. We don't know what it is.
I understand.
It's going to be tomorrow. So my pleasure. Good to see you.
Always a joy, my friend. I adore you, and I thank you so much. And let us both work hard as we are doing to educate that agent population out there to the best of our ability. You're the best, honey.
That's a deal. We'll do that. Bye.
Bye, honey.
Bye, everybody.